This is Sebastian Seabass, and I am replying back to one of our listener questions. This is about adventures in Rokugan, including non-human character options in a adventure that is definitely more catered towards more human issues. Ryan G, he asks, the main thing I'm struggling with is how to either A, guide my players towards human Rokugan NPCs, or B, deal with a party consisting of mostly non-humans that happens in Rokugan or the Shadowlands. They're open to that option. That's a concern since my group loves to play non-humans in all of our other D&D 5e settings, but I don't feel equipped to flesh out that sort of story in Rokugan without turning it completely into Inuyasha. Now, an Inuyasha-style campaign that takes place earlier in the timeline might be fun, but I'd like to at least start with a smaller campaign in a more traditional Rokugan setting. That's a good question. How do you include non-human characters, mingling them together with your human characters? My initial thought was that you should be asking your players why their non-human characters are interested in the human conflict that you're proposing first. You're going to want to ask your players this because if they do come up with some sound reasoning for their characters, you might not have to deal with including a lot of spirit realms interactions. If the players trying to play these non-human characters say that, well, their characters are interested in this court intrigue, in fighting bandits or whatever, because it's either impacting the role or job that they've been given by maybe the Great Tengu, for example, if they're from Chikshiro or something like that, or if it's impacting them because it's getting in the way of their own motivations for why they're even hanging around with humans to begin with. Cool, you don't have to deal with all the spirit realms things because these non-human characters are invested in human ordeals. And also, in the rules for Adventures in Rokugan, each non-human character does have the ability to appear human. You don't have to have everybody that the PCs come across go, wow, it's a snake person, holy crap, every 5 seconds, because they would likely appear as a samurai on horseback, and all of that is just one big illusion hiding the fact that they're a giant snake person, right? But if your players want to have that focus on their non-human character, you might have to be honest with them that you're not an expert on spiritual realms, or that you will have to rely on the players to bring up those elements. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. If they do want to focus on non-human characters, they do want to bring those elements into the story when you're not comfortable with it, then the responsibility is on the players to either be okay with these mistakes, be okay with not having as much inclusion, and especially because players are just as able to add to the story, to add to the narrative things that they're interested in from their own backstory as the GM is. It's not the GM's sole responsibility to include character backstory elements because it's a collaborative effort at the table, right? The player could, for example, after making some kind of roll, try to do some research on a subject that has to do with humans. They can say in the past, because this isn't I wasn't just born yesterday into this human world, right? Maybe in the past, because I've been dealing with humans for X amount of time, this reminds me of the past when I did this and this with a group of samurai or whatever, right? So in the likely event, this is the alternative. Your players will likely hear that question of, so why is your bird person interested in the courts of Rokugan? And they'll say, oh, I haven't thought of that. If they're having a hard time trying to give their non-human character stakes in human affairs, then you might have to either be honest with them that you think they might have a better time starting with human characters, at least for this adventure, for this initial premise, and maybe in the future, they can try some non-human characters once you're a bit more familiar with spirit realms. And instead, maybe the players might have to be honest with you, where they're saying they're not interested in the kind of adventure that you're pitching. And that's okay too. So if you pitched the adventure is you are protecting a small town, you're a band of 7 Ronin who are trying to protect this town against bandits who are regularly extorting them for food and their belongings. And you ask the players, why is your character invested even though they're not human? And they say, well, actually, I don't think they would. But to be honest, I don't think I'm really into the idea of fighting a bunch of bandits. It just doesn't sound exciting for me. It's not the reason why I would want to play Legend of the Five Rings. I'm much more interested in playing Inuyasha, right? Or whatever. That means that maybe you should come to the table with more plot hooks. You can ask your players for plot hook ideas. For instance, you brought up the Shadowlands, might be something that you're interested in. So there's the whole fate of the realm idea, where it's like, sure, the crab are the ones who are constantly at war with the Shadowlands. Sure, there's rat people, Nozumi, who are in the Shadowlands, who are trying to protect their own lands, probably. But maybe because the Shinamen Mori, which is the haunted forest of Rokugan, also has some ties to Shadowlands taint. That could be a reason why maybe the Great Tengu of the Shinamen Mori has tasked you, a fox person, to travel with this band of samurai into the Shadowlands because there's an artifact of great value to the Great Tengu, or maybe because there's some overlap between Jigoku, which the taint of Jigoku is throughout the Shadowlands, Jigoku and Chikushuro, or, there's some kind of overlap there where there's a pending invasion of some sort that's putting some kind of pressure on Chikushuro. So those are additional ideas you could bring up. Having more ideas, at least 3 or 5, that should be enough to hopefully find somebody, or something that somebody, that should be enough to find something that everybody at the table, or somebody, having at least 3 to 5 plot hooks, ideas to bring to the table, that should be enough to find something for everybody. But, of course, you know your situation better than I could, and I may be way off track, but hopefully it helps. I know that everybody wants to everybody at the table wants to have fun with this system. Your players want to start off with something that you can handle, very likely. So communication is just best here. And I wish you best of luck. Well, I'm just a couple months late after getting this message, and Ryan G did reply. He said it was incredibly helpful. He said thank you. He said that you're definitely on the right track, at least for my situation, so this gives me a lot to work with. All right, what if instead of trying to convince your players that maybe they might want to change their options, or maybe convincing your players that, hey, if they really want to bring the backstory elements into the story, they got to do it themselves. What if the core of the issue here is you just need a little bit of a primer, a little bit of what you need to know in order to include some of these non-human characters as a GM? So we're going to answer the questions of the micro adventure, where it's very focused in, it's centered on, bandits attacking a village. And then we're going to expand out to the Fate of the Realm style kind of adventure, where it's the Shadowlands. And I just want to say at first, there's a quick hack here where you basically just have the characters grow up in the village, near the village, having some kind of relationship to them, if it's that bandit type adventure. Or if it's the Shadowlands adventure, having them grow up at the wall, working at the wall. And that would be, in other words, saying that these non-human characters are affiliated with a clan, maybe masquerading as a samurai for long enough to be a part of their ranks. And we actually see that in some of the official FFG fiction as well. I want to say even a great family daimyo even might be like a fox spirit. So it's not unheard of. We're going to go through each of these different examples here. And we're going to start with the Naga. These are the snake people. So why would Naga want to bother with a bandit attack? well, quite easily, if they grew up in the village or near the village, they would have some kind of feeling of responsibility over this village. Or maybe if they're not, if they're in maybe the Shinominmori, that's the haunted forest that's in Rokugan, it could be that the bandits are creating such a commotion that it's also bothering the forest. Maybe their headquarters is based out of that forest, and that's what's bothering the Naga. Nezumi are also in the Shinominmori. They could be bothered by the same thing, as would the Tengu animal yokai as well. And Naga are also found in way south beyond the Shadowlands. They're found in the Ivory Kingdoms, which they have their version of the Shadowlands that are north to them, which is actually the very same Shadowlands. Those are known as the Ghostlands. And the Naga of the Ivory Kingdoms maybe could have traveled far enough north to where they made contact with the Crab Clan to try to broker some kind of alliance between the two for some big threat that's in the Shadowlands. There's also the Nezumi. Even though the Nezumi do have a home within Shinamamori, they also have various tribes inside the Shadowlands as well, and could have come across the human player characters or your mismatch of non-human human characters while they travel into the Shadowlands to try to forge an alliance with them. Masaku are bureaucratic demons. They're going to fill the same kind of roles that samurai would in Ningendo, but instead in the spirit realms. So that would be Bushi types, Yojimbo, courtiers. Those are all the kind of Masaku that you would see. And the reason they would travel to the human realm is to try to wrangle demons who have escaped these spirit realms and try to put them back where they belong. So if that is a Gaki from the realm of hungry ghosts that made its way to Ningendo, a Masaku who would try to wrangle that spirit to bring it back to the realm of hungry spirits or whatever, right? So that would be a reason why the Masaku would be interested perhaps in human affairs in a village setting. Maybe the leader of the bandits is somebody who's escaped from the realm of slaughter. They need to be put back in that realm. Maybe they were possessing the bandit leader, something like that. For the Shadowlands, might be a bit more difficult to say why Masaku is involved there, but maybe they're trying to bring back some kind of powerful Oni or something that escaped from Jigoku, and they need to put them back where they belong before they create a larger rift or maybe a larger entrance into Ningendo. For the specters, for the ghosts, of course, this is going to be easier because once upon a time, before they passed on to becoming a ghost, they were human, so they could have friends, families within this village for the bandit scenario. For the Shadowlands, maybe they have to reclaim their lost artifacts or something, their equipment. Maybe their body is lost to the Shadowlands and they need to reclaim it. Maybe it's possessed like a zombie by the Kansen that are in the Shadowlands. And so the spirit needs to exercise their body to, have it be able to be buried or cremated. I mean, that could be a reason for it. For the Tengu are focused on honing their craft. They're usually hermit types, but there are social Tengu as well that try to mingle with society because that's just something they want to experience. And the Great Tengu is the head or daimyo, if you want to say, of Chikshuro, which would be the animal spirit realm. And the Great Tengu doesn't have to be a bird person. It's just a title that you can give any great animal spirit. But, the Great Tengu could be sending a number of these either Tengu or animal yokai to either take care of this threat to the village, take care of the threat to their own Shinominmori, or could be sending them to the Shadowlands to do things as well. For animal spirits, that might be the hardest one, sending them to the Shadowlands. However, they could easily have some kind of tie with the village if you're going with the bandit scenario. Maybe they've been a part of the village for so long that nobody knew that there were animal spirit until now. It could also be that maybe they're traveling, they're wandering. This is also kind of with the Tengu situation. If they're a wandering type, maybe they've come upon this village and they feel some kind of interest, responsibility, some sense of justice to try to save this village. And for the Shadowlands for an animal spirit, it could very well be that they are a crab samurai and therefore they're tasked to go through into the Shadowlands. It could also be that they have some kind of direction from the Great Tengu to travel into the Shadowlands to reclaim something that's important. And then for the unique existence, that could be anything. That could be, you're a living painting, you're a living umbrella. It could be that you're part celestial dragon. And with that, there's no pre-existing lore surrounding those different kinds of entities. So you're really free to just make up any reason you like as far as why you care about this village. Maybe you were awakened in that village and you're residing there, or you live there, and this is now your problem with the bandits. It could be that for the Shadowlands, you are of the Crab Clan, or otherwise you have some kind of calling, some kind of great destiny where you need to travel into the Shadowlands in order to accomplish it. Now, of course, those are just some general examples that I can give with my limited knowledge about these different non-human options. I don't know a lot about their history or about their functions in Rokugan either, but for that, there is the L5R wiki. If you look up any of these non-human character options, they will surely show some kind of history about what they're about and what kind of struggles they've had to deal with prior to the timeline that you're working with in your campaign. If you're not too concerned with trying to be super lore friendly, then I feel like you can come up with pretty good reasons for any of these to be involved in your party and for any of them to work together, because there are some overlap, as we talked about. They could have all grown up near or around the village. They could have all been part of the Crab Clan. A lot of these non-human options come from or are based out of the Shinamin Mori. A lot of these are based out of Chikshuro, which is the realm of animal spirits. So I think with that, even if you have to work around two different stories, there's two spirit realms co-oping and happen to be converging for this village. Even though they might sound outrageous, the players can try to fill in some of the blanks. They can come up with their own reasons too. And I think with those powers combined, you'll be just fine. Anyway, I hope that advice works. I hope that the advice helps. Hope it alleviates some of the anxiety around including non-human characters in your Adventures in Rokugan adventure. Because honestly, this is new ground, and I think it's really exciting. I think it's awesome that Adventures in Rokugan has this new take where it's more high fantasy. The humans in the setting are a bit more accepting and acclimated to non-human characters. You don't have to have any of your non-human characters pose as humans just to get around the fact that they are non-human. You can have them be out and about, no hiding Nezumi, no hiding, Mazku, just out and about. If you want to have that kind of experience with L5R, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to stick to the super low fantasy that perhaps would have been common for 4th edition, maybe 5th edition as well. Probably what most of the old heads are used to seeing in their adventures. Kind of seems like they're pushing a new direction with Adventures in Rokugan, and it might be fun to experiment and try to follow that direction, see where it leads. What does it look like in a perhaps Ghibli-inspired L5R, like Spirited Away or something, where there's just a bunch of yokai in a city together? What would it be like trying to explore that Inuyasha style? What would be the problem with that? And if it comes down to your personal preference, totally understandable. But if it comes down to wanting to be lore friendly, I think you might want to try to be a bit more open minded because that's where Adventures in Rokugan seems to be leaning towards. They give you the tools to not include it if you don't want to, by having your adventurers pose as humans, but also gives you the reins to say if you want these to be out and about yokai and Mazuku and all that, you can. And I think that could be a really exciting adventure. All right. Thank you for watching. Hope these examples helped. I did get a little bit rambly towards the end there, but for any kind of questions, leave them in the comments. This Adventures of Rokugan is brand new to me, like it is to the rest of you, and I'm having fun exploring it. Meanwhile, if you have any questions about 5th edition Legend of the Five Rings, if you have questions about any of the content that I'm posting on CourtGamesPod.com or on itch.io, leave me a comment and I'd be happy to answer. And looking forward to a great 2023. Hopefully we see more Legend of the Five Rings content coming from Edge Studios. I know we've already got some things coming up from Aconite Press with some of the novels from Legend of the Five Rings, and that's exciting. And of course, here at Court Games, we look forward to bringing you more news, more discussions, and yeah, thanks for watching.